Yeah, as you no doubt kind of can pick up, I am from Scotland. Haven't lived there in a while, and but it's still very, very inspiring to me in terms of what I write. In particular, my hometown, and in particular, the part of the town that I come from, the part of Edinburgh I come from is called Leith, which is this kind of Iron Man type kind of sort of fascist sort of T-shirt that I'm wearing. And I find it a very inspirational place, and I go back a lot to my hometown, and I get kind of, people are quite happy for me, people are quite supportive of me, and they appreciate kind of that I write about Leith, but they're not uncritical. I remember one time, I remember fairly recently, a couple of years ago, I was back in town, and this woman stopped me on Leith Walk, and she said to me, I don't like the way you portray Leith. And I said, well, what's wrong with that, She goes, well, everybody isn't like a drug dealer or a drug addict or a thief or an alcoholic, She goes, what about the fucking prostitutes? What about us? So I kind of feel that I have been a little bit remiss about including the prostitutes. So this is a kind of a little story, basically an anecdote about what happened to me just before Christmas. And I had a local an encounter with the local ladies of the night, and it kind of just to give you a little bit of a background about prostitution in Edinburgh. Because Edinburgh was designated the AIDS capital of Europe back in the 80s, mainly because of intravenous drug use, and then it was seen as a gay man's disease, so there wasn't really a big thing about sort of the intravenous drug users kind of flew under the radar, and the city council reckoned that a lot of it was kind of spread by prostitution, on-street prostitution, unprotected sex. So they took a very, very enlightened policy, and they opened these things, with the police, they opened these things called saunas, which are basically brothels, and they're dotted all over Edinburgh. They're licensed brothels, basically, they're licensed by the council. So it's taken prostitution off the streets and into these places, which are very kind of, hygienic, and, everybody has, condoms and health checks and stuff like that. It's very regulated, it's very safe for the women, and the punters seem to like it because they have their local ones that they swear by. It's maybe about a couple of dozen of these establishments. And one of them is actually, I've got an apartment in Edinburgh, and this very nice big apartment in this kind of Georgian district of the city centre called the New Town. It's beautiful. Beautiful architecture designed by James Craig. Is the first planned kind of new town in the Western world, basically. And round the corner from my apartment, there's the London Road sauna, which is kind of basically my local brothel, if you like. And I was back in town just before Christmas, and I got into town. I was very, very jet lagged. I'd been in Mexico. Salman was there at the same time, and not in a brothel. Didn't see him in a brothel. And I'd been to Peru, to Arequipa, and then I'd gone straight to Scotland. And so I was very kind of jet lagged and disorientated. My wife had met me there. She's American. She met me there in Scotland, and we kind of just got in, and we thought, I'll just go down. I want to just go to bed. So I went downstairs to get a pint of milk, and my local corner shop is next door to the brothel. And I saw these two guys walking down the street, and I thought to myself, kind of a bit bleary and disorientated still, I recognize these guys from somewhere. And I thought, fuck me, one of these guys is an Oscar winner. Danny Boyle, Slumdog Millionaire, Best Director. The other one is an Oscar nominee, John Hodge, Best Adapted Screenplay, Trainspotting. And they're walking towards me, and I said to them, what are you guys doing here? And Danny said to me, and this is they all have another theme, basically. Danny said to me, I was going to do a Manchester accent, but I'm a bit intimidated after Sarah. But he said, I said, what are you guys doing here? And he goes, don't you ever pick up your emails? So, we're here we're wrecking your fucking book to make it into a film. And I goes, all right, of course, yeah. I mean, we've talked about nothing else for the last 2 or 3 years, but I didn't actually realize they were in town because I hadn't been picking up my emails. I've been traveling. And I said, but what are you specifically doing here in my street? He goes, oh, we're going to that brothel to talk to the girls and the operators for research. And he said, well, come in with us. And John and Danny were carrying a big stack of my books. And I says, what's this for? I want you to come in with us so you can sign them. We're going to sign them for the girls. And I thought, no. Fuck that, I'm jet lagged. I'm not walking into a brothel in my hometown, which is next to the corner shop that I go to. So I said to them, let me get some sleep and let me kind of get a bit more social, and I'll meet you tonight. So we met up tonight. We met up that night, but I said I got into my house, and the apartment that I live in, it's on the second floor in this Georgian flat, and it's kind of, I get a bit paranoid when I go away because we've got this lovely big brass knocker. It's like a sailing ship, and it's got revenge underneath it. And when people get into the stair, sometimes you get there's a stair entry phone, but sometimes the door doesn't shut right, and you get kind of drunk, so you get kind of couples having sex or shooting drugs just on their way, on their way home. I mean, New York, you know about all this. You know about tenement life. You've got to make sure that door is shut, basically. So I get paranoid. I think somebody's going to come in. They're going to take my beautiful brass sailing ship plate away. So I was relieved that it was still there. Every time I go back, I'm relieved that it's still there. So I said to my wife, you never guess who I saw about to go into the brothel. And of course, she reeled off every single one of my friends and all my male relatives before I said to her, no, it was actually Danny Boyle and John Hodge. And I'm just going to meet them for dinner. So I got a bit of sleep. I went down to my favourite restaurant called Fisher's in Leith down the shore, and I met John and Danny and also Andrew and Christian, the two producers of the film. And we're kind of sitting there, sort of having a chat about old times. So, and also talking about the movie on it, obviously. So I then said to Danny and John, how did you get on in the brothel? And Danny goes, oh, it was great, the girls were lovely, but we want you to go in. You must go in and sign these books tomorrow. You've got to keep them on side. We're working with people, and it's important we involve the local community and keep them on side. He says, all right, I get the point. Because, Danny talks all the time, constantly. John never speaks. He just listens actively. That psycho kind of stare. So I thought, I'm not going to risk their wrath. I'm going to go in and, and do this. So the next day, I'm kind of a bit shifty and worried that somebody's going to see me go in because I've got a lot of sort of neighbours in the area. I creeps down into the brothel in London Street in the basement, opens the door, and I sees a guy there, and he thinks I'm a punter. But the first person I see is my niece, Angela, sitting there, looking right at me. And we both at the same time went, what the fuck are you doing here? And she said, oh, I'm doing, she's a student at Edinburgh University, and I thought she was kind of supplementing kind of the student grant or the fees or whatever. And she says, no, I'm doing my master's thesis on sex workers, and I'm visiting all the brothels at Edinburgh. And she showed me the questionnaire and the letter, and the girls that she's talking to have verified all this. And then she said to me, wait just now, what are you doing here? And I said, well, the same thing as you, it's research. The film, Danny Boyle and John Hodge, kind of train spotting to porno. So we're kind of, we're here. But of course, it's a completely different shift to the ones that were there yesterday. And they've no knowledge of Danny and John. An interesting thing, one detail I've forgotten about this story. An interesting thing was that when Danny and John went to see the girls, they'd said, we've done this film called Train Spotting. And instantly, the girls went, oh, Transporter. They're thinking of the Jason Statham action flick. Brilliant, brilliant. Will we meet Jason Statham? And Danny had said, well, perhaps. He didn't want to burst their bubble, So anyway, I'm sitting there. Sitting there with Angela. I'm saying, look, I've got to sign these books. The books will be around. They couldn't find the books. So Angela's looking at me as if I'm look at me in this very kind of disappointed and sort of kind of quite kind of horrified way, and thinking, you horrible, sleazy, sad old bastard. This is getting out. So I thought, God, somebody, I've got to kind of, somebody help me, So I'm shouting, no, it's kind of Danny, John, kind of train spotting. And thankfully at that point, this woman came in and she goes, Transporter, Jason Statham. And she pointed at me and I thought this is great, But I was very flattered, obviously, because even though we've got the same hairdresser, there's not a lot of resemblance between Jason Statham and I. I mean, I actually know Jason is a very nice guy, and I'm quite friendly with him. But action heroes are action heroes, and writers are writers for specific reasons, basically. So I'm kind of very, very flattered by this. And the books were there. I signed the books, and everybody's kind of happy. They found the books in a locker. So basically headed back out, went home, and my wife and I are kind of, we're going to this party that night, and we went to the party, and I must confess I drank too much. I got a bit drunk, sort of euphoric at Christmas back home, and I felt terrible. I just went to bed, and instantly she just falls into a deep sleep, as she always does. I'm more of an insomniac, as a lot of writers are. I couldn't get to sleep. I just kind of writhe and twist and sweat in bed if I have a drink. So I suddenly I'm lying awake kind of next to her, and I hear this kind of scraping noise from outside, and I just get really fucking paranoid, and I think, those little bastards have got into the stair, local kids, and they're taking my beautiful brass plate with revenge and the ship. So I get bleary-eyed, I get out of bed, and I pull on the first kind of garment over my head that's lying there in a heap, and I grab this baseball bat. Everybody in Scotland has a baseball bat. Nobody plays baseball, but everybody keeps a baseball bat for some reason. So I'm running outside and opens the door, and there's two guys off down the stairs. So I'm charging after them, shouting obscenities. I get outside, and of course they're away down the road. And I realize that the garment I've pulled on is actually my wife's dress. It's a blue dress. So it's a very kind of sort of woolen kind of dress, basically. So I'm standing there in a blue dress and a baseball bat, bare feet. And of course, for the first time ever, the door closes and clicks behind me. Just at that moment, two of the girls from the sauna are coming down the street. One of them shouts at me, "Jason Statham, in a dress!" So what happened was I managed to, I know I was never going to wake my wife up, but the guy upstairs, Tom, who's a very nice guy, kind of posh English guy, who kind of let me into the stair, and I'm walking up the stairs in the dress, nice blue dress, and bare feet with my baseball bat. And Tom said to me, What sort of a party was it you were at tonight, Irvine? But anyway, I was happy. I got in and I saved my door knocker. Thank you so much for your indulgence, folks.